Every great civilization aimed to stand the test of time. Ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, Imperial China, the Islamic Golden Age, the British Empire, even the Soviet Union. Yet, history tells a different story. Empires rise, empires fall. Some civilizations disappear. Others endure for thousands of years. So here's the question. If every civilization is unique, why do they all seem to follow remarkably similar patterns? After comparing thousands of years of history, one conclusion stands out. Civilizations don't succeed or fail by accident. Every civilization, regardless of its culture, religion, geography, or era, must solve the same 5 fundamental questions. First, can it feed its people? Second, can it create order? Third, can it generate wealth? Fourth, can it continue innovating? And finally, can it keep adapting as the world changes? History suggests that civilizations rise, decline, or endure according to how well they continue answering these 5 questions over time. Everything begins with food. Ancient Egypt flourished because the Nile produced reliable agricultural surpluses. The Indus Valley civilization built one of the world's earliest planned urban societies, supported by agriculture, drainage system, and standardized city planning. But food alone was never been enough. Rome became one of history's greatest empires, not because it had better farmland, but because it built institutions, roads, laws, administration, and taxation. Britain became the world's financial center because contracts and property rights became increasingly protected under the rule of law. The Indian Ocean Trade Network and the Silk Road connected civilizations, moving not only goods, but also mathematics, religion, technologies, ideas across continents. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad translated and expanded knowledge from Greece, Persia, and India, while Nalanda in India attracted scholars from across Asia for centuries. Together, they remind us that civilizations prosper when they become the center of knowledge, not the center of power. Song China transformed the world through printing, paper money, and technological innovation. Modern Singapore demonstrates that even a country with limited natural resources can achieve extraordinary prosperity through strong institutions, education, and effective governance. The pattern is remarkably consistent. Resources create opportunity, institutions create prosperity. Civilizations rarely collapse overnight. They weaken gradually. Prosperity creates complexity. Complexity becomes rigidity. Rigidity makes reforms more difficult. Then comes the trigger. The Western Roman Empire was already weakened by corruption, fiscal stress, and military overstretch before invasions accelerated its fall. The classic Maya faced environmental stress, but political fragmentations made recovery far more difficult. The Qing dynasty struggled to modernize while rival powers industrialized. The Soviet Union became increasingly rigid, economically stagnant, and unable to adapt to changing realities. History reveals a recurring pattern. Collapse usually begins long before it becomes visible. Not every civilization disappears. Some survive repeated crises. Chinese civilization endured repeated dynastic collapses while preserving its cultural identity. Indian civilization survived invasions, new empires, colonial rule, partition, and independence while maintaining one of the world's oldest continuous civilizational traditions. Japan transformed itself during the Meiji Restoration from a feudal society into an industrial power without abandoning its cultural foundations. Different histories, one recurring principle. The civilizations that endure preserve their identity while continuously reforming the institutions. Identity plus adaptation creates longevity. Now let's apply everything we have learned. History suggests civilizations prosper through strong institutions, innovation, education, and the ability to adapt. They decline when those strengths weaken. So where do today's civilizations stand? Countries such as the United States, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Switzerland, and the Nordic nations and much of Western Europe currently demonstrate the highest institutional and adaptive capacity. They combine strong institutions, advanced innovation ecosystems, and resilient economies. Yet they also face significant long-term challenges, including aging populations, rising public debt, political polarization, slowing productivity growth, and intensifying geopolitical competition. India, the Gulf states, and much of sub-Saharan Africa represent the greatest long-term growth potential, provided they continue strengthening institutions, investing in human capital, and sustaining long-term reforms. Russia and much of Latin America retain considerable strengths but continue to face structural, economics, demographic, and institutional headwinds that may constrain their long-term trajectory. Meanwhile, conflict-affected states remain the most vulnerable, where weak institutions, insecurity, economic fragility, and humanitarian crisis reinforce one another. One conclusion becomes clear. No civilization's future is predetermined. History rewards those that continue to adapt. The assessment isn't based on geography, ideology, or military power. It's based on the same foundations that have shaped civilizations for thousands of years. The United States continues to lead in frontier innovation, research, entrepreneurship, and global finance. East Asia remains the world's industrial and advanced manufacturing powerhouse, underpinning much of the global economy. Singapore, Switzerland, and the Nordic countries demonstrate how strong institutions and effective governance with high social trust create long-term resilience. India and much of sub-Saharan Africa possesses the greatest demographic potential. If matched with education, employment, institutional development, and productivity investment, this could become one of the defining advantages of the 21st century. The Gulf states are pursuing one of the world's most ambitious economic transformations, diversifying beyond hydrocarbon-dependent economies into knowledge, technology, tourism, finance, logistics, and advanced industries. History suggests that the civilizations most likely to prosper tomorrow will not necessarily be the most powerful today. They will be the ones that continue strengthening the timeless foundations of civilization, institutions, knowledge, innovation, and adaptability. Across thousands of years, history consistently rewards civilizations that solve tomorrow's problem before they become today's crisis, that invest in education before they fall behind, that innovate before they are forced to, that maintain fiscal discipline before debt becomes a crisis, that uphold the rule of law, reward merit, build infrastructure, and reform continuously. History also punishes the same mistakes repeatedly: corruption, elite capture, institutional rigidity, unsustainable debt, political polarization, neglect of innovation, dependence on a single source of wealth, and short-term thinking. If history could be reduced to one simple framework, it might look like this. Strong institutions build trust. Trust encourages investment. Investment drives innovation. Innovation creates prosperity. Prosperity funds adaptation. And adaptation determines whether prosperity lasts. Break any part of this chain and decline eventually follows. Strengthen it and civilizations become remarkably resilient. Across more than 5,000 years of recorded history, one lesson rises above all this. Civilizations do not prosper because they are destined to succeed, and they do not collapse because they encounter crisis. Every civilization faces wars, economic shocks, political conflict, and moments of uncertainty. What separates those that endure from those that disappear is their ability to learn, to reform, and to adapt. History cannot predict the future with certainty, but it reveals patterns. Patterns that have shaped every civilization before us. The question is no longer whether those patterns exist. The question is whether we recognize them before history asks us to learn from them the hard way. Because civilizations are not remembered for the crisis they faced. They are remembered for how they responded to them. Ideas shape decisions and decisions shape civilizations. Recognize your role as a stakeholder and join the stakeholders bridge.